Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to have you all here today. We're going to take a topic that honestly often sounds a bit dry and bureaucratic, and we're going to completely demystify it. Today, we're decoding the ultimate blueprint for solving society's biggest issues. We're talking about public policy. So let's jump right in. I want to start by posing a slightly surprising question to you. Think about this for a second. What happens when the government looks at a massive problem, weighs their options, and decides to do absolutely nothing at all? Is that a failure of policy? Or is it something else entirely? Well, one of the most famous definitions of public policy in the academic world is actually quite revealing. It says, public policy is literally everything governments choose to do or not do. Intentional inaction, deciding to leave a system exactly as it is without intervening, that can have just as massive an impact on society as passing a sweeping new law. Choosing not to act is, in itself, a really powerful policy choice. So to help you really grasp this, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, defining public policy. Number 2, features of a policy. Number 3, 3 main policy types. Number 4, the policy-making process. And finally, number 5, did the policy work? Okay, starting with Section 1, defining public policy, the problem solver's blueprint.
Let's look at the formal definition. It sounds a little dense at first glance. Public policy is a formal, documented statement of a government's intentions and a goal-directed course of action designed to deal with public problems. But let's just break that down into plain English. It means that policy isn't just some vague idea floating around. It's a documented master plan. It's a highly intentional, goal-oriented MAC created specifically to fix deficiencies, solve social issues, or even counter threats. Think of it like a school administration dealing with a persistent bullying problem. They don't just sit back and hope it magically goes away, right? They write down a clear, actionable set of rules and steps to actively eliminate the issue and protect the students.
But I actually prefer this next definition. It describes public policy as the art of creating and solving problems worth solving. And this is great because it brilliantly illustrates that policy isn't just boring government paperwork. It's a highly creative, purposeful tool for change. It really is the ultimate schema of public administration. You're trying to figure out what issues actually matter to citizens, and then designing an elegant, functional solution to fix them. And historically, this concept of using state power to solve problems, it is definitely not new. Just look at these philosophical heavyweights. Aristotle saw policy as the very principles that separate a system serving the common good from one that just serves a selfish ruler. The ancient Arthashastra by Kautilya described policy as the rod, basically the science of politics used to acquire and distribute resources to the worthy. Islamic policy frames it fundamentally around morality, justice, and honesty, asserting the state has a moral obligation to establish fairness. And then, of course, you have Machiavelli, taking a slightly more devious angle, viewing policy as a means to manipulate circumstances purely to maintain power and control. Moving right along to Section 2, features of a policy. What makes it official? Now, you might be wondering, how do we actually tell the difference between a random government action and a true official policy? Well, a true policy has these core characteristics. First, it's a purposive action. That means it's not a random accident. It's an intentional course taken to address a real matter of concern. Second, it's an official choice made by authorized government bodies. Third, it is deliberate and authorized, meaning elected public representatives, like a cabinet or a minister, have formally approved it using their political authority. And finally, it usually involves resource distribution. It equitably divides up the state's financial resources, time, or manpower to resolve conflicts and protect rights. Now pay close attention here because this trips up students all the time. Policy and strategy are absolutely not the same thing. On one hand, we have policy. This is the what and the why. These are the general, high-level goals decided by elected representatives. If the overarching goal is to reduce carbon emissions by 20%, that's the big-picture destination. On the other hand, we have strategy. This is the how. These are the exact, ground-level measures and actions formulated by the state apparatus, the bureaucracy, to actually make those big-picture policy goals a reality. So if policy is the destination, strategy is the vehicle you drive, the route you take, and the fuel you use to actually get there. Which brings us to Section 3. 3 main policy types, the tools in the toolbox. Governments have different types of policies depending entirely on the specific problem they're trying to solve. These break down into 3 main academic categories that essentially act as tools. First up, we have regulatory policy. The purpose here is to maintain order and prohibit dangerous behaviors.
Think of everyday things like speed limits that keep pedestrians safe, or complex anti-monopoly laws that stop massive corporations from squashing small businesses. Second, we have distributive policy. This is when the government provides specific benefits to encourage certain activities. For example, giving direct subsidies to farmers so our national food supply stays stable, regardless of the weather, or offering tax write-offs to encourage citizens to buy homes. Third is redistributive policy. This one is all about promoting equality by taking societal wealth from one group and giving it to another. You'll often see this achieved through welfare programs that support vulnerable citizens, which are funded by progressive taxation, where higher earners pay a larger percentage. Next up is Section 4, the policy-making process, idea to reality. So how does an idea actually become a law? Modern research generally breaks this down into a highly systematic 5-stage cycle. Turning an idea into reality requires climbing step by step from agenda setting up to policy formulation, then to decision-making or adoption, down into implementation, and finally into evaluation. Every single effective policy has to go through this exact life cycle. Let's walk through these stages together. The first 2 stages are agenda setting and policy formulation. You'd be surprised, but the hardest part is often just getting leaders to recognize the problem in the first place. The policy agenda is the limited range of issues the political system is actively addressing at any given time. Getting a new issue onto that list takes immense political support and public pressure. Once it's finally there, we enter formulation, where stakeholders shape specific proposals. This requires an analytical phase, finding a solution that's actually valid and efficient based on data, and a political phase, ensuring the solution is broadly acceptable enough to pass. Then we hit stage 3, decision-making and adoption. And wow, is this stage messy. This is universally recognized as the absolute most political stage of the entire cycle. The drafted policy moves to the legislative ground where it's going to be debated, rejected, changed, or formally adopted. To get it endorsed, politicians have to bargain, compromise, and negotiate constantly. They use tactics like log rolling, which basically means, hey, I'll vote for your policy if you vote for mine, and pork barrel politics, where they attach local funding benefits to national bills just to win over stubborn votes. It is a highly chaotic, highly human process. Once a policy finally survives that and passes, we hit stage 4, implementation. The elected officials are mostly done now. They hand this formal legal intent over to public administrators, boards, and agencies. These are the folks who actually do the heavy lifting of putting the policy into action out in the real world. And here's a really fascinating detail. Because legislative laws are often written quite vaguely just to secure enough votes to pass, it's these ground-level public administrators who actually end up specifying the exact, detailed rules of the policy as they carry it out day to day. And finally, Section 5. Did the policy work? Evaluation and termination. A government's job isn't over just because a new role was put into place. We absolutely have to measure success, and that happens through monitoring and evaluation, or M&E. This is an objective, empirical, and systematic examination of the policy. Staff or outside consultants will come in and use rigorous social science methodology to collect real data. They're checking the theoretical blueprint against reality. Are we actually fixing the problem we set out to fix? Is it costing too much? Getting this up-to-date, accurate information is absolutely essential because it allows the government to make vital midterm corrections if the policy is veering off track. And that leads us to policy termination. This is the final stage where you're supposed to cancel policies that have become dysfunctional, outdated, or just plain unnecessary. But here is a little secret for you. Governments are notoriously terrible at this step. They absolutely love creating new rules and announcing flashier programs, but they frequently neglect to clean up the old, useless ones that are just clogging up the system and wasting resources. So, we've walked through the blueprint. We've seen how ideas actually become action. And I want to leave you with this final, empowering thought today. If public policy truly is the art of creating and solving problems worth solving, look around your community, your country, your world. What problem do you think we should solve next? Because you now know the exact manual for how it gets done. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep asking great questions, and I'll catch you next time.